The SCP universe is primarily one focused around humans and the effects that these anomalies have on human life. There are articles I've touched upon, though, that are about anomalies interacting with other anomalies, and histories of species other than humans. History often bleeds into the present, though, and with SCP-4812, we'll be looking at some remnants from a couple past kingdoms and setting up for something larger.
Past kingdoms?
SCP-4812
That's pretty
describes
cool.
not one, but 3 separate entities that are collectively designated as 4812. Conveniently, one of them is classified as safe, one is Euclid, and one is Keter, so we can refer to them as S, E, and K for simplicity. There's also mention of a 4th, redacted entity, but we'll get to that one towards the end.
Oh, a secret one.
4812-S
dude.
is a large amorphous entity located in a pitch-black cavern underneath France. It's attached to the cave walls by a number of long adhesive appendages, and its body is covered in many more of these appendages.
Oh.
The entire entity is covered in fine, water-repellent hair. S's anomalous effect is that any living being that views it, either directly or through images or videos, will experience a violent, fatal reaction that is similar to covering your eyes, brain, and nervous system in extremely caustic acid. This effect is immediate and untreatable once initiated, leading victims to suffer severe pain, bleeding through skin and orifices, paralysis, asphyxiation, and eventually death.
Oh,
For this reason, no amount of light is to be let into the cave, and
That was
only a
rather
completely
grim.
blind MTF is allowed to interact with the entity. Even the hairs shaved off of the creature cause severe nausea, hallucinations, and swelling of the eyes and brain if viewed, leading to death as well if not treated promptly. Because of these effects, the Foundation isn't really sure what the creature truly looks like, but they do believe that its appendages extend deep into the earth around the cave. Since the cave is sealed with multiple maximum security vault doors, and 4812-S doesn't really do much, it's pretty safe.
for the record, yes. Safe just means like it's easy to contain, right? But holy, you look upon it, you like have a severe death. Fascinating. I like it a lot. It doesn't seem to have any like particular function either, though. And maybe it's very difficult to like properly research this thing, because you know, if you can't really look at what you're researching, it's gonna be difficult. Now, I will say, this might just be like from the pictures, but is this like mass from human remains, or is it just the pictures themselves that are like that? Because it's like, at least in the pictures that's shown, it seems very like some type of slime entity just souped up a bunch of people, and then you have all these tentacles and eyeballs and heads. It's like, hey, can we get some SCP-999? No, we have this thing here at home. It probably has nothing to do with the SCP, and I'm just probably like shooting in the dark here, obviously. I mean, that's my specialty, come on.
So far, so bloodborne, but we're ramping up now for 4812-E.
So far, so bloodborne.
E is a humanoid entity around 15 meters or 50 feet in length, constructed primarily of platinum and other metals. Its anomalous effect is that it's a near-perfect heat sink, and the temperature around its body normally is extremely cold. Basically, its body automatically sucks the heat from around it, and it's capable of reducing a standard containment cell to near absolute zero in around 16 seconds.
Oh, that's wild.
Because of this effect, E is constantly surrounded by an aura of frozen air and water, unless exposed to high temperatures, obscuring its true appearance. Obviously, this effect is pretty lethal to humans, killing in seconds as the water inside of their bodies freezes. E is contained then by being kept inside of a tank of molten iron, in a containment chamber that's kept at a constant 1400 degrees Celsius. A drop in
Jesus.
internal temperature of more than 50
Holy.
degrees is considered a breach of containment. Okay, a little trickier, but still contained.
Yeah.
The Foundation is having a lot of trouble, though, with 4812-K.
I think it's a cool
K is
entity,
a
though.
massive
It's a pretty
winged
cool entity.
insectoid, resembling a cross between a stag beetle and a scorpion.
Oh!
It's roughly 180 meters, or nearly 600 feet in length.
It's
With
massive!
6 appendages, 2 of which end in large pincers, and a long tail ending in a serrated barb. Curiously though, instead of an insectoid mouth and eyes, it instead has a human face, the size of a normal human male, meaning that it looks especially small compared to its massive body. It also has 4 wings, and its entire body is covered in a thick, highly reflective chitin, making it nearly invisible visually.
Chitin, I don't know what that is.
K spends most of its time in the upper stratosphere of Earth, rarely moving in any perceptible way except to maintain altitude. Because of its invisibility, the fact that it doesn't produce heat or reflect sound, and its rate of movement meant that the Foundation had no idea it even existed for a long time.
That is wild. That kind of reminds me a little bit about that, was it Avatar, The Last Airbender? He's like in some mythical place and you see this creature with some faces. I do wonder though, what in the world is it that makes him so dangerous? I mean, it's Keter. Oh wait, nah, never mind. It doesn't necessarily need to be dangerous. It just needs to be hard to contain. That makes sense. Look, if it's flightful and it's nearly undetectable by any measurement that we have, other than maybe like visual contact, then it's understandable why it's really, really difficult to like pin him down. Oh, and I'm also curious, I wonder what's his relation to humans is. There's no shot that he just happens to have a human face, right? Maybe it's something like when he eats a human or something, he gets their face, or maybe it's like an evolutionary thing. You know what I mean? Like kind of like, you know how like that fish that has like this thing, right? Maybe it's like the same concept. Essentially, it just lures out humans that are like, oh look, there's Robert, right, or something like that. Like, oh, there's a person right there. Let's go say hi, and then it's like snatches you. You know, might be something like that too. Oh, it's a cool creature. It's a cool creature. Holy.
Now that they know it exists, though, they of course have to try and contain it, but it's been rough going. Any ship or drone that could keep pace with it, as it can travel in excess of 800 kilometers per hour, are easily destroyed by its strength and size.
Oh.
Any weapon that has actually connected with it has not damaged it in any perceptible way. In fact, it would seem that any kinetic energy that collides with it is reflected entirely, leading Foundation researchers to think that the entity is in some way a near-perfect reflector.
Oh.
So far, then, we have 3 rather unique
cool.
entities, none of which really pose an excessive threat, but also don't seem to be connected in any meaningful way.
Yeah, what connects them then?
We're told that none of the entities should ever be exposed to either of the other 2, but we'll have to read on to find out more. The next item related to 4812 is a series of documents and artifacts recovered from an anomalous collector before his death.
Just shooting another shot out in the dark. Maybe it's a little bit like how SCP-682 is to the sun in some sense, right? In principle, 682 is like infinite evolvement, right? So he can evolve infinitely. So which is why you can't fly him to the sun, because then he's gonna grow so big and just consume the entire everything, right? What if it's something similar? I don't know what the danger is between connecting then the S and the E entities. But I can definitely see the K entity and any of the other entities. Any of the other 2 entities, right? Because if it's a perfect reflector and then you take it with the E dude and you let them like approach each other, brother, it's gonna freeze everything like that, right? It's gonna suck out all the energy. There gotta be some underlying mechanism that when they interact with each other, they magnify or they change properties in a way that like makes them highly destructive. That's the only way I could ever see this really work out.
The collection is named the Connington set, after the 18th century English archaeologist and occultist Winston J. Connington, whose research led the Foundation to discover multiple SCPs. The collection includes 16 coins of various shapes and sizes, none of which match any known currency, 5 Egyptian papyrus scrolls that appear to be ancient star maps, with illegible notes in the margins that seem to have been bleached out at some point, 3 large leather-bound tomes written in German, full of what appeared to be archaic coordinates, with one book marking changes in temperature, These books were seemingly written over the course of many years. A brass spyglass with a cracked crystal lens containing a number of small ornate mechanisms. A thick burlap sack containing at least 3 more consecutive burlap sacks, and in the center, a thick gelatinous mass. Looking at the sack tends to make subjects feel ill and suffer from a slight burning sensation behind their eyes. A pair of glasses with iron frames and solid iron lenses, which, when worn, show a slight glow when looking at the burlap sack. A thin circlet made of gold and platinum, with 3 prongs situated around the circlet, 2 of which are broken, and 1 contains a small glass sphere that is warm to the touch. Finally, there's a journal, written by Connington himself, which contains depictions of all 3 4812 entities and his personal research. One of the 3 leather-bound books has a short section in Italian, presumably written by a different author than the rest, containing a list of names and dates. Many of the dates have another number written after the date, such as 1343-89, listed next to the name Tornold of Yair. The rest of the section has been translated for us, and it's here we get our first bit of history. There apparently was a great old lost kingdom that was respected above all others, known as the House of Apollyon, or the Sky Kings of Old Europe. The first of their kings, Harion von Apollyon I, was said to have descended from the blood of the King of Crimson Skies, often called Assem, the First Man.
Wait, like Sarkis?
The Sky Kings apparently ruled old Europe for 100 generations, facing opposition from the Deva to the east and those faithful to the Iron God to the south, presumably meaning the Mechanites, the precursors to the Church of the Broken God.
Is this like the traditional Sarkism versus Church of the Broken God kind of complex? I'm not gonna lie, ever since those 2 concepts have been explained to me, I just see them reflected everywhere in the SCP universe. So I think I might be like insanely biased. I think I am. I gotta be honest. Dude, there's no reason for me to be like, something that's fleshy, something that's metal. But yeah, I keep making that assumption continuously. Now he said it though. This is a little bit different. He actually said it, so that we know what it plays on. But yeah, so I do apologize if I do that a little bit much. But it's just like, I don't know. It's like my go-to. Does he have metal arms? Church of Broken God. Yeah, it's just.
The House of Apollyon were conquerors, and it was some conquered foes that first called King Itus von Apollyon Sky King, because it was said that his reach extended past the bounds of the earth.
So is this like a separate group?
Complacency reared its ugly head, though, and eventually King Saurus von Apollyon VIII grew bored with ruling old Europe and set out to conquer an even greater realm. He looked past the lands of men, across the sea where the fair folk were said to live, and set sail with the largest army ever assembled on the path of unnecessary war. I've talked about fairies in the SCP universe before, in SCP-4000 and the Factory 001 proposal, but knowledge of these articles is irrelevant for this one. The fair folk were caught up in a war with the emerging power of the Children of the Moon, presumably meaning SCP-1000, and were blindsided by Saurus's attack. Their people were utterly brutalized and scattered, with the nobility stripped down and mutilated. Only one survivor was taken as a trophy, a Fey princess. The princess had other plans, though, and on the return trip, she cast a wicked spell upon the House of Apollyon and the Sky King in particular, bringing a terrible storm down onto the ships. During this, she prayed to an old and nameless god for vengeance upon the House of Apollyon, and legend says that her iron chains caught fire and burned Saurus's ship to cinder. They also say that Saurus himself was dragged down into the ocean depths by those same iron chains. The destruction wasn't total, and the remaining ships managed to still take the princess back to the kingdom, where young Saurus von Apollyon IX now ruled. Knowing what she had done, Saurus threw the princess into a dungeon deep beneath the earth and sealed it, leaving her to rot in the dark.
That's kind of like the SCP. So maybe through like some anomalous means, praying to this old god, she has now become an anomaly. I guess it's supposedly it could also be the fallen king, the Sky King. Since he fell in the sea, I'm gonna assume it isn't him because it's like, you know, tectonic plate, hasn't been moving around that much. This is probably not that old for that to be relevant or a possibility. But this could definitely be a possibility. She could 100% be somebody who is now this anomaly thing. My mama always told me, don't pray to the old gods, they'll come for you. And I think that's true. Hey, this is true. Apologies, battery ran out, and well, now it's like 5 hours later. Got like 20-30 more minutes before I gotta go to bed, so quick. Just finishing up this recording. I apologize. I'll continue now. I don't remember exactly what we watched, but I'm sure it was brilliant, okay?
To assist in preventing any further retribution from the fair folk and their dark magic, Saurus appointed 4 great knights to defend the kingdom. Lahyre the Fierce, Lancelot the Cunning, Hector the Stalwart, and Ogier the Faithful. So far, this is just starting to sound like the plot for Dark Souls 4, and while we can safely guess that the amorphous entity in the cave under
Sounds
France
like a
is the
D&D
fairy
raid.
princess, the explanation for the other 2 is a little murkier. Unfortunately, the majority of Connington's journal is written in a cipher, but a few short sections have been translated. One section quotes an archivist that worked for the House of Apollyon and discusses the first of the Great Profanities. Apparently, the voice of the enemy beneath the earth spoke to the souls of the 4 great knights, and Sky King Apollyon was forced to banish them.
Oh,
The
did they
long
get
night
like
settled
correct or
over
something?
his kingdom, and the winter winds came from the east, but Hector did not answer. From the far darkness came something called the Venuvinex, or the Profane Restrictor, the first of the Great Profanities. The Venuvinex cast a cold hand across the king's only daughter, killing her. The king retaliated by taking the godless lance and the mammoth's hide and drove the spear into the Venuvinex, driving it into the flaming heart of the earth. Interesting. And it's worth noting that the 4 knights are not the 4812 entities. They became something else that isn't really relevant here. The point is that they couldn't protect the kingdom
like
from
their own
these
SCPs?
profanities, the first of which seems to be E, the metallic entity that sucks the heat from the air around it.
Wait. The 4 knights. Wait. It's related to the possession mask. It gotta be like a year and a half ago or something like that, since we watched this SCP. But there is this one SCP that you enter, and you enter like to your own like dimension. And then there's like 4 main characters, one of which is believed to belong to the possession mask, who isn't really there. And then there's like 3 others. And everybody's wearing these like masks and stuff. Reality is warped, and it's a very, very strange world. It's like a dream world. But that made me think like, wait, what if these 4 knights, if you will, were banished into this realm? It could be the case, right? Which could give an origin to them. But I don't remember their name, which is so sad.
The king lost his daughter to this monster, but he managed to drive it deep into the earth where the great temperature will subdue it, using the godless lance. As for the identity of this lance, if you're familiar with the Ouroboros cycle, you've heard of it before.
We haven't
referred
started
to
there yet.
as the spear of the non-believer.
We haven't started
Another
there yet.
section discusses another of these profanities.
It's been a bit too long.
The
It's like
profane
3 hours long.
adamant, also called the Lamenelant, or the King of Many Faces by the Deva. This would be 4812-K, and it apparently caused a lot of issues for the Deva, as it appeared as if from a space beyond space to destroy their kingdom. Anything that the Deva and their warriors
Kinda
tried
like
to
a
do
god?
against the creature was turned back on themselves, and when they had been ground into dust, the creature took their faces and returned to the skies. The final of the
That's how he got
profanities
the
was known
faces.
as the Profane Dark, as it festered in the enemy's grave
That does sound
until
like
it
the Avatar.
soaked through the earth and burst out. It proceeded to pull the Sky King into the void, and the Sky King cursed it by calling it Yash, the last foe of man. And when the Sky King watched as his kingdom was ruined without the assistance of the four knights, all he could repeat was one word: wrath. The author says that he has seen the face of the Lemenelant, and he knows of the fiery chasm in which the Venuvinex seethes, but he dares not seek out the profane dark. Quoting another author, they write that the eyes of Yash offer no release into death, only the winding roads of torment that lead to the puller of eyes and sharpener of spines, where no man returns and no voices are heard.
Oof.
The castle of fire, the king of crimson skies, the reaper of dreams flees from the eyes of Yash, the last scream of the nameless folk beyond the sea.
Jesus Christ.
Men scream out and are silenced. The light of the sun
What is
invites
this
order
nightmare?
to the most fundamental nature of this world, and the Yash abhors it. Wrath, wrath, wrath. This would seem to be the redacted entity mentioned only briefly at the start, the greatest of the three profanities, and what sounds like quite a cosmic horror. Enough history, though. Let's bring things back to the present with the Foundation's containment efforts of S, E, and K.
And the special
K
one. There's
first came
supposed
to
to
the
be a
attention
special
of the
one too.
Foundation in 1964, when it passed over the northern USSR and was mistaken for an experimental US aircraft, causing Soviet fighters to engage it. K rapidly ascended and disappeared from sight before re-engaging the fighters at high speeds and quickly destroying them. Since then, K has only been detected a handful of times, mostly due to visual distortions caused by its reflective skin. It seems to follow a vague pattern over the Earth, often passing over the containment sites of S and E, as well as something else which is redacted.
So is it like
E was
seeking
found
them?
shortly after the Foundation received the Connington set, following up on some coordinates in one of the tomes. This led them to a thermal anomaly beneath a lake, and their investigations ended up opening a fissure beneath the lake, causing temperatures to rapidly drop, as E was released from the thermal vent it was trapped in. An MTF was brought in to contain the entity, but its temperature-draining effect made this difficult. Worse still, E was beginning to move towards the nearest population center, resulting in the MTF utilizing long-range artillery weapons to bombard it. The combination of a controlled gas explosion next to E and a mass of molten slag being dropped on top of it by remote drone led to the entity finally being contained. As for S, the Foundation administrator had mentioned the site of the cave in his notes as a location of interest, since other occult investigative organizations had known about the cave for some time. Up until Foundation involvement, though, they believed that the cave itself was an anomaly, since no one who had gone in had ever come back out. On June 9th, 2002, 3 months after the containment of E, K was seen diverting from its normal flight pattern, heading towards an area in the North Sea. For some reason, K had suddenly engaged with a global occult coalition transport ship, an action that had so far never been recorded, as K
What?
only normally attacked when provoked. The Foundation swooped in to assist, and managed to drive away K
Wait, what
from
were
the
they
transport
transporting?
ship. They then offered transport assistance to the ship, but the GOC refused and continued on, eventually docking in Norway.
Hey, my
At the
place.
same time that this skirmish was going on,
Didn't know we had
E
that.
had become increasingly active, necessitating the activation of previously untested technology to further increase the containment temperature.
Does that mean that maybe the GOC transported something of interest that provoked K? What could have that been then? Like the lance, maybe? The lance, maybe? It's the... I don't know, like the weapon they referred to as like the spear of the non-believer or something, right? Or it could be that fourth mystical thing they mentioned in the beginning. Because I do remember he mentioned there was like, you have the S, you have the E, you have the K, but then you also have like the mystery one. And I didn't really catch what that was. He might have said it and I might have been like, you know.
Also, several tremors were felt near the site of S, and seismographs revealed that a large portion of the cave system had collapsed, and S has since moved upwards no less than 70 meters. So yeah, it would seem that the GOC were up to some shenanigans,
Yeah.
and they've got the three entities upset. Sometime
we're doing
after
something.
those events, the Foundation received a transmission from the GOC, informing the Foundation that they are forbidden from further involvement with three specific paranormal entities. The first is given the codename Mars by the GOC, a massive winged scorpioid entity, K. The second is called Pluto, a large human-like entity that dramatically alters the total energy of the system directly surrounding it, E. The third, though, is called Eros, a small, partially mummified, vaguely human-like entity currently in possession of the GOC. We haven't really heard about this one yet, and the Foundation doesn't believe that Eros is one of the three entities described in the Connington set, meaning not one of the three profane entities.
Oh.
The GOC know that the Foundation have E, and tell them to make every effort to destroy it, as well as turn over all info they have about it and the other two entities to the GOC. See, the GOC don't have the information from the Connington set, but the Foundation doesn't have some info that the GOC have found, meaning no one's playing with a full hand of cards. The GOC tells them that the Russians managed to get a tracking device on K a few years ago, allowing them to accurately follow its path. It seems to be looking for something. They believe that E, K, and the Eros entity they have are the three profanities, and they're looking for the princess that cursed them into existence. Following K's path, it appears to be favoring someplace in France, the cave where S is located. They thought that Eros was the princess at first, but it's too small to be a human woman, and the physiology is all wrong. Like I said,
Human
the
hobbit?
GOC don't have all the info, and they have no idea that fairies were involved. This means that S is not the princess. Eros is. They've been trying to kill Eros to weaken the princess, which they believe to be in the cave, not realizing that Eros is the princess. K attacked their transport ship containing Eros to free her, because only the princess can fully control the three of them, including the profane Dark, which is the entity in the cave. The Foundation realizes at this point that things are very close to complete disaster, and rush to completely seal in the cave while trying to figure out a way to shoot K out of the sky. All in all, this is just a lot of fun world building, with glimpses of the past.
It's amazing! It's so good!
And the way that ancient history in the SCP universe often sticks around to complicate the present. I mostly covered this SCP to provide some background info for another SCP, 4840, but it's a great article on its own too. Funny that this all came about because a single king wasn't satisfied with his kingdom, and unfortunately attacked some very wrathful foes.
I think he said 4840 was like the build-up for the next one, so I think for the next video we are gonna watch 4840. Peace.